The great chamber of the Galactic. Council stretched upward like the inside of a cathedral. 12 species had built it. Together over 1,000 years, light fell through crystal windows that showed the stars beyond. The seats rose in circles around a central platform where speakers addressed the assembly. Today, those seats held representatives from across known space. Today they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Wei stood at the back of the human delegation's small section. She was a small woman with gray in her black hair and calm dark eyes that gave nothing away. She had served Earth for 30 years. In postings across the galaxy, she had seen first contact with 3 species. She had negotiated trade deals and prevented 2 wars. None of that experience showed on her face now as she listened to the council debate whether her species deserved to exist as equals. The humans have been a probationary member for 40 years, said the delegate. He was tall and thin with blue skin that shifted colors with his mood. Right now, it was pale yellow, the color of contempt. In that time they have expanded to 17 colony worlds. They trade with us, they share some technology, but they remain secretive about their military capabilities because they have none worth mentioning, said High Commander of the Dominion. He was massive, nearly 3 m tall with thick gray hide and 4 arms. His species had conquered 60 worlds through sheer numbers. The Dominion bred soldiers, like other civilizations, grew crops. Our intelligence shows the humans maintain a standing army of only 2 million soldiers, 2 million for 17 worlds and a home planet of 8 billion. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Ambassador did not react. The Dominion field's 2 billion soldiers continued. The Confederacy maintains conscription records for every adult citizen. Even the peaceful keep a reserve force of 500 million. The humans have 2 million. He made a sound like grinding rocks. His species' version of mockery. They are not a military power. They are barely planetary defense force spread across 17 targets. The council chair, an ancient with feathers the color of sunset, raised one wing for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we grant humanity full membership with all rights and protections, or do they remain probationary, subject to the decisions of this council regarding their territories? I would speak, said Ambassador. The floor is not yours, Ambassador. The chair replied. Probationary members observe. They do not participate in votes regarding their own status. Bow her head in acknowledgement. Her face remained calm. Then I will speak, said. The Dominion has long observed the human expansion into the outer reach. 3 of their colony worlds sit within space. We have historical claims to New Port Meridian Aran Station. These worlds were surveyed by Dominion scouts 2 centuries before humans left their birth planet. Those surveys established no settlements, the delegate said softly. She was small and furred with large dark eyes. Under council law, unsettled space is open to all. Council law applies to council members, replied. Humans are probationary. Their claims are provisional. The Dominion requests authority to reassert our historical rights to these 3 worlds. We will relocate the human colonists humanely. We will compensate Earth for any infrastructure, but these worlds will return to Dominion control. Step forward. I must protest this action. You may not speak, the chair repeated. Then hear this as a statement. For the record, said. Her voice was Steady and clear, the people of Newport, Meridian and Aaron Station are human. Citizens, they built those colonies with their own hands over 3 generations. They are not bargaining chips to be traded between powers. Earth will not abandon them, made his grinding laugh. Again, and what will Earth do? Send their 2 million soldiers. We could lose 2 million soldiers in training accidents each year and not notice. Your protest is noted, Ambassador. It is also meaningless. You misunderstand, said quietly. What do we misunderstand? What a professional army means. More laughter filled the chamber. The delegate's skin flushed orange with amusement. Even the gentle seemed to smile. Professional soldiers said, yes. We have heard this human term. You do not conscript your citizens. You ask for volunteers and then train them for years before deployment. This is why your numbers are so small. You are too sentimental to demand service from your people, so you must beg for it. The result is an army too small to defend your own territory. The result, said, is something you have never faced. The chair struck the ancient chime that called for order. Enough. The Dominion's request will be voted upon. Those in favor of granting the peacekeeping authority over the 3 human colony worlds in the outer reach. 8 of the 12 delegates raised their appendages in agreement. The motion passed. The council has decided. The chair announced the Dominion is granted peacekeeping authority over New Port, Meridian and Aaron Station. Human colonists will be given 60 standard days to relocate. This session is concluded. Ambassador stood motionless as the delegates began to leave. The other members of her delegation looked to her with fear in their eyes. A young aide touched her elbow. Ambassador, what do we do? Watched lumber from the chamber. Surrounded by his officers, they were already celebrating, already planning their conquest. We do nothing, said. We send a message. Then we wait. A message to who? Pulled out her communication device. It was small and plain, standard diplomatic equipment. She typed a short message in a code that only Earth's military command would recognize. The message contained only 5 words. They have chosen send the 3rd. She transmitted it and put the device away. Then she turned to her frightened staff with something that might have been a smile. Now we wait, she said again, and when this is over, the council will understand what they should have learned before they voted. Professional does not mean small. It does not mean weak. It does not mean sentimental. What does it mean? The aide asked. Watch the last of the delegates disappear through the great doors. High commander's laughter still echoed in the ancient chamber. They are about to find out, she said, and they will remember the lesson for 1,000 years. 3 weeks later, the invasion fleet entered orbit around New. They brought 2 million soldiers, 1,000 landing craft, and the absolute certainty of easy victory. They had studied the human colony carefully. Snort's population of 800,000 civilians, no visible military installations, no defense fleet. They did not notice the small transport ship that arrived in system 6 hours after. They did. It carried only 4,000 passengers. But those 4,000 were about to teach the Galactic Council a lesson about the difference between soldiers and warriors, between conscripts and professionals, between an army and a force of nature. The education of the galaxy was about to begin. The sky above New burned orange with the trails of a thousand landing craft, Fleet Lord stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched his invasion force descend like a swarm of metal locusts. 2,000,000 soldiers, the largest deployment the Dominion had authorized in 50 years. It was, in his opinion, massive overkill for a single colony world, but the Council had wanted a statement. The humans needed to understand their place in galactic society, and so had brought enough soldiers to bury the entire colony under bodies if necessary. Colonial Governor is broadcasting. His communications officer reported, "Let me hear it." The human woman's voice filled the bridge. She sounded calm, almost bored. "This is Governor Sarah of New. To all citizens, evacuation protocols are now in effect. Proceed to your designated shelter areas. Remain calm. Help is on the way." Snorted. "Help? What help can they possibly send? Patch me through to the colonial frequency." The connection opened with a soft click. Governor said, "I am Fleet Lord of the Dominion. You have 60 days to evacuate your population. Resist and I will shorten that timeline considerably. Your choice." There was a pause, then the woman's voice returned, still calm. "Fleet Lord, I acknowledge your transmission. I should inform you that Earth has dispatched a military response. They will arrive shortly." Military response turned to his tactical officer. "What do our sensors show?" "One human transport ship fleet. Lord, small, perhaps 5,000 capacity. It entered system 6 hours after we did and is currently in high orbit." 5,000 laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Governor, I have 2,000,000 soldiers landing on your world as we speak. If your government has sent 5,000 to oppose me, I admire their courage if not their mathematics." 4,000. Actually, the governor replied. "The 3rd Expeditionary Brigade plus support elements." 4,000 shook his head. "Governor, I lose more soldiers than that to accidents during transport. This is not a military response. This is a diplomatic gesture, a face-saving measure so Earth can claim they tried, if you say so, Fleet Lord." Something in her tone made uneasy, but he pushed the feeling aside. "Begin full deployment," he ordered. "I want boots on the ground within the hour." Invasion proceeded exactly as planned. Dropships descended in waves, each carrying 1,000 conscript soldiers, bred for obedience and trained for mass infantry tactics. They landed in the plains surrounding the colonial capital, forming into their standard assault columns. Officers bellowed orders through voice amplifiers. Soldiers marched into formation, shoulder to shoulder, weapon to weapon, a wall of gray flesh and metal that stretched to the horizon. 6 hours into deployment received his first unusual report. "Fleet Lord, we have intercepted human military communications, and we cannot understand them." Frown. "Is it encrypted?" "No, Fleet Lord, the words are clear. We simply do not understand what they mean. They keep referring to NCOs and fire teams and combined arms doctrine. They mention rules of engagement and sector coverage and something called Overwatch positions. Military jargon. All armies have it." "Yes, Fleet Lord, but our analysts have studied 12 different species military structures. These terms match nothing we have seen before. The organizational structure they imply is unusual." "Unusual how?" "It appears they are dividing their forces into very small groups, some as small as 4 soldiers and they seemed to be giving command, authority to extremely low-ranking personnel. Dismissed the report with a wave. Desperation tactics, they have 4,000 soldiers facing 2 million. They are trying to spread out to avoid being destroyed in a single engagement. It will not help them, but somewhere in the mountains overlooking the capital. First, Sergeant Cole finished checking his platoon's positions and felt satisfied. 42 soldiers spread across 3 kilometers of terrain. Each fire team had clear sight lines, overlapping fields of fire, and multiple fallback positions. Each soldier knew exactly what to do if communications failed. Each team later had authority to engage or withdraw based on their own judgment of the tactical situation. Cole gathered his squad leaders for a final brief. There was no great speech, no dramatic moment, just a professional reviewing the plan with other professionals. Same as training, he told them, trust your fire team, watch your sectors. The enemy has numbers, we have everything else. Questions? There were none. Then get to your positions. They will reach our first line in about 3 hours. Let them come deep before we start. I want them committed before they know we are here. The squad leaders dispersed. Without a word, they had trained for this for years, some for decades. Every scenario, every terrain type, every possible enemy tactic had been studied and practiced until responses were automatic. They did not need speeches or motivation. They needed only the order to begin. 3 hours later, the first columns entered the mountain passes. Young officer named marched near the front of his unit. He was fresh from the breeding vats, only 2 years old, but already he had been designated for command track based on his slightly elevated intelligence. He would lead 100 soldiers into battle today. He felt proud. His scanner showed the terrain ahead, hills, valleys, scattered vegetation, no enemy contacts. The humans had apparently fled before the Dominions might. Then something on his scanner made him pause. He looked again, trying to understand what he was seeing. The humans were not fleeing. They were spreading out into the hills in small groups. They were taking positions. They were waiting. Commander, he called to his superior, I am detecting human forces in the hills ahead. They appear to be forward march. His commander interrupted. Our orders are to advance. We advance. But sir, they have taken defensive positions. Perhaps we should. We advance. The humans are too few to matter. Forward march. Obeyed. He had been bred to obey, but as his unit moved deeper into the pass, he could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were waiting, and somehow that terrified him more than any enemy he had been trained to face. First shots came 20 minutes later, and in that moment, the education of the Dominion began in earnest. The first column died without understanding what killed them. One moment they were marching through a narrow valley, packed shoulder to shoulder in their standard formation. The next moment their officers simply dropped. No warning, no visible enemy, just the soft crack of distant rifles and the heavy thud of bodies hitting the ground. The column stopped. 2,000 soldiers looked around in confusion, waiting for orders, but their officers were dead. Their communication equipment was screaming static, and no orders came. 3 kilometers away, Corporal Diana lowered her rifle and spoke quietly into her radio. Alpha Team, 6 targets down, moving to secondary position. Copy that, came the response. Bravo team. Engaging eastern column. Charlie team. Has eyes on reserve forces. Was 26 years old. She had enlisted at 18, completed 4 years of training before her first deployment, and served on 6 worlds and 8 years of service. She held certifications in marksmanship, combat medicine, communications, and explosive ordnance disposal. She spoke 3 alien languages and had completed a degree studies through the military education program. She was, by standards, low-ranking soldier, barely worth noticing. She was also about to ruin Fleet Lord's entire day. Fire team. Shift right, she ordered. We have another column approaching from the south. 400 m. Wait for my mark. Her 3 teammates moved without a word. They had trained together for 3 years. They knew each other's movements, each other's thinking, each other's capabilities. They did not need detailed orders, they needed only direction. This was the thing they did not understand, could not understand. Their entire military philosophy was built on mass conscription and rigid hierarchy. Soldiers were bred, given basic training, and deployed in enormous numbers. They followed orders from officers who followed orders from commanders who followed orders from generals. Independent thinking was not just discouraged, it was bred out of them. Human soldiers were the opposite. Every private was trained to lead a fire team. Every corporal could command a squad. Every sergeant could run a platoon. Every officer could lose their entire chain of command and continue fighting effectively, because every single soldier under them had been taught to think, adapt, and decide. The column in the Southern Valley received the same treatment as the first. Officers died in the opening seconds. Communications dissolved into chaos, and 2,000 soldiers stood frozen, waiting for orders that would never come. Then the real killing began. Human fire teams moved through the terrain like ghosts. They engaged from concealment, fired precise bursts, and vanished before any counterattack could form. They tried to charge toward the gunfire, but there was nothing to charge. By the time they reached a position, the humans had already moved to another. Fleet Lord received his first casualty. Reports 4 hours into the engagement. How many dead? He demanded. 12,000 confirmed. Fleet Lord, another 8,000 wounded or missing. And the humans? No confirmed kills. We have found empty positions, spent ammunition casings, boot prints, but no bodies. 20,000 casualties, and we have not killed a single enemy. It appears so. Fleet Lord stared at the tactical display. His forces were spread across a 100 km of terrain, advancing in their standard columns, and somewhere in that terrain 4,000 humans were picking them apart. How is this possible? They are outnumbered 500 to 1. Our analysts are still attempting to understand their tactics. Fleet Lord, they do not fight like any army we have encountered. They do not hold positions. They do not form lines. They strike and vanish and strike again from a different direction. Our soldiers cannot find them, and when they do, the humans are already gone. Then use artillery bombardment. Level the mountains if you must. We have tried. Fleet Lord, by the time our artillery is aimed, the humans have relocated. They seem to know exactly when to move. Our communications are compromised. They are jamming our frequencies and intercepting our orders. 4,000 soldiers are doing all this. It appears so, in the mountains first. Sergeant Cole listened to intercepted communications and allowed himself a small smile. The enemy was confused, demoralized. Their command structure was collapsing because it had never been designed to function without constant top-down control. This was the fundamental difference between a conscript army and a professional one. Conscripts were tools, weapons pointed by their commanders. Professionals were entire weapon systems unto themselves. Each fire team operated independently, made decisions independently, adapted independently. They did not need orders from distant commanders because they had spent years learning to command themselves. A medic named Torres approached Cole's position, leading a stumbling figure in gray uniform. Prisoner First Sergeant wandered into our line. Seems to be in shock. Cole looked at the young. It was the officer named, though Cole did not know that. The alien's eyes were wide and unfocused. His uniform was torn and stained with mud. What happened to your unit? Cole asked. His voice came out in a whisper. Gone, all gone. I gave orders, but no one listened. I tried to lead a charge, but there was nothing to charge. They are everywhere and nowhere. What are you? We are soldiers. No, shook his head. We are soldiers. You are something else, something we were never told about. Cole nodded to Toss. Patch him up and release him. Let him return to his lines. Release him. Why? Because he has a story to tell, and because killing prisoners is not what professionals do. Tor led the shocked away. Cole returned to monitoring communications. The battle was going exactly as planned. Human casualties stood at 7 wounded, none killed. Casualties were approaching 40,000 and climbing by the hour. By nightfall, Fleet Lord was receiving reports that made his blood run cold. Fleet Lord, we have intercepted a human communication. From there, they are asking if we would like them to send additional forces. Reinforcements. How many? They are offering the 1st and 2nd Expeditionary Brigades. Fleet Lord, the 3rd Brigade we're facing is apparently not even a frontline unit. They are designated as a rapid response force for colonial emergencies. Sat heavily in his command chair. You are telling me this is not their best army, according to the communication. Fleet Lord, Earth maintains 12 expeditionary brigades for external operations. The 1st and 2nd have twice the personnel and equipment of the 3rd. They are asking if we want to continue this engagement or if we are ready to discuss terms. For the first time in his career, Fleet Lord felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. Fear. He was afraid not of dying. Commanders did not fear death. He was afraid of something far worse. He was afraid of being wrong about humans, wrong about professional armies, wrong about everything he thought he understood about warfare. Get me a channel to the council, he said. Quietly, they need to see this. They need to understand what we are facing. What are we facing? Fleet Lord, watch. The casualty numbers continue to climb. On his display, 45,000. 50,000 and still rising. I do not know, he admitted, but I suspect the entire galaxy is about to find out. The Galactic Council reconvened an emergency session 3 days after the invasion began. The great chamber was silent. No laughter this time, no mockery, only the soft hum of Display screens showing live footage. From new, the footage came from helmet. Cameras, it showed soldiers dying in ways the council had never witnessed. Clean, precise, almost surgical. Officers fell first, always then. Communications equipment, then any soldier who tried to organize. Resistance. The humans were invisible. Untouchable, everywhere and nowhere at once. What are we seeing? The delegate asked. His skin had gone pale gray, the color of fear, the destruction of our invasion force. High Commander replied. He had come personally to address the council. His voice was hollow. We have lost 600,000 soldiers in 3 days. The humans have lost none. None. Confirmed some wounded, no deaths. We have not recovered a single human body. The delegate leaned forward with her large dark eyes. How is this possible? You sent 2 million soldiers, and they sent 4,000, brought up a tactical display. This is their deployment pattern. Notice anything? The council studied the display. Dozens of small symbols were scattered across the terrain around the colonial capital. They moved constantly, never staying in one place for long. They are spread very thin, the chair observed. Yes, each symbol represents a fire team of 4 soldiers. They operate independently, choosing their own targets, their own positions, their own timing. We cannot predict their movements because each team is making its own decisions. No central command. They have commanders, but their commanders do not seem to control every action. They give objectives and let their soldiers determine how to achieve them. Every soldier is capable of independent tactical judgment. Every soldier can call in artillery strikes or air support, or coordinate with other teams without asking permission. The skin flickered with confusion. That is chaos. An army cannot function without strict hierarchy. We believe the same thing, said. We were wrong. A new voice spoke from the human delegation section. May I address the council now? All eyes turned to Ambassador. She stood calmly, hands folded, face revealing nothing. The chair hesitated, then gestured toward the central platform. You may speak. Ambassador walked to the platform with measured steps. She carried no notes, no displays, no props, just her voice and 30 years of diplomatic experience. High Commander is correct, she began. Human military doctrine is built on what we call distributed command authority. Every soldier is trained to lead. Every soldier is trained to think. This is not chaos. This is the result of centuries of military evolution. Evolution toward what? The asked toward quality over quantity. Humanity has fought many wars. We learned early that conscript armies lose to profession armies when other factors are equal. We learned that one soldier who is trained for 10 years is worth 100 soldiers who have trained for 10 weeks. We learned that initiative and adaptability are more valuable than obedience and numbers. But the cost, the delegate said, training soldiers for years instead of weeks. The investment must be enormous. It is every human soldier represents approximately 10 million credits in training, education, equipment, and support over their career. A full division represents more wealth than some planetary economies. We do not deploy our soldiers lightly because we cannot afford to lose them. Made a bitter sound. Then why send only 4,000? If your soldiers are so valuable, why risk them at all? Because 4,000 was enough. His voice remained steady. Fleet Lord has 2 million soldiers, he has lost 600,000, he will lose more, and when it is over, he will withdraw with whatever remains of his force, we will lose none. The investment will be preserved. You cannot know that, we know exactly that because we have done this before. Not with your species, but with others. Every time the result is the same. Quality defeats quantity, professionals defeat conscripts. This is not theory. This is demonstrated fact. The council chamber fell silent on the display screens. The footage continued. Snorts. Soldiers wandered in confused groups. Their officers dead, their communications jammed, their training useless against an enemy that refused to stand and fight like a proper army. There is something else you should understand, said something more important than tactics or training. What is that? The chair asked. Why we built this army in the first place. Paused, letting the silence build. Humanity is not a warlike species. We do not seek conquest. We do not desire empire. We have 17 colony worlds and no ambition for more. We trade with anyone who will trade with us. We share technology freely. We have never attacked another species unprovoked. Then why maintain such a powerful military? Because the universe is dangerous. Because other species do seek conquest. Because 40 years ago we asked to join the council and were told we were too weak to be worth protecting, so we built a military that would ensure we never needed protection. She gestured toward the display screens. What you are seeing is not conquest, it is defense. We did not invade space, we defended our colonists, and when this is over, we will not pursue Fleet Lord to his. We will not demand territory or reparations. We will simply protect what is ours and ask to be left alone. You expect us to believe that, demanded. With power like this, you could conquer half the galaxy. Yes, we could, met his eyes without flinching. That is precisely the point. Snorts. We have the power to conquer, and we choose not to. That choice is what makes us different from they. Dominion. That choice is what makes our soldiers professionals instead of weapons. I do not understand. A professional soldier follows rules of engagement. They protect civilians. They treat prisoners humanely. They use minimum necessary force. They serve their people, not their leaders. The power exists to defend, not to dominate. And because our soldiers choose restraint when they could choose destruction, they earn the right to wield such power. She turned to address the full council. This is what your intelligence services missed. Our army is small not because we are weak, but because we only need enough to protect ourselves. Every soldier is trained not just in warfare but in ethics, law, history, and civilian oversight. They are not tools of conquest. They are guardians of a civilization that wants nothing more than peace. At that moment, a new report arrived on display. His face went pale. What is it? The chair asked. Human ships have been detected in the Dominion's home system. His voice cracked. A small fleet. Observation vessels. They claim, they say they are here to document what happens next if we continue the invasion. The message was clear. Humanity was not threatening conquest. Humanity was demonstrating capability. They could reach the Dominion anytime they wanted. They had chosen not to attack, but the choice could be revisited if the Dominion did not back down. Smiled slightly. We have no interest in your territory, High Commander, but we will protect our people always. That is what A professional army is for. Stared at the display for a long moment, then he turned to the council chair with defeat. In his eyes, I will order the withdrawal. The retreat began at dawn on the seventh day. Drop ships descended from orbit to collect the survivors. They came in waves, hundreds at a time. And still it took 3 days to evacuate. Everyone who remained, Fleet Lord had landed 2 million soldiers. He was leaving with 1.4 million, 600,000 casualties, and the vast majority had not died from human weapons. They had died from confusion, from accidents, from the complete collapse of their command structure. They had died because no one told them what to do, and they had never been trained to figure it out themselves. Sergeant Major James watched the evacuation from a hillside overlooking the plains. He was 53 years old, with gray in his close-cropped hair and 30 years of service behind him. He had fought on 12 worlds, learned 3 alien languages, and earned a degree in xenobiology during his off-duty hours. He was by any measure one of the most dangerous human beings alive. He was also tired and ready to go home. Quite a sight, said Colonel Harrison, the brigade commander, as she joined him. 2 million in, 1.4 million out, and we didn't lose anyone. We got lucky. Replied, we got trained. There's a difference. Nodded. She was right. Of course, luck had nothing to do with it. Every soldier in the 3rd Brigade had spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. They had studied tactics, learned their weaknesses, practiced against simulated conscript armies until the responses were automatic. When the moment came, they had simply executed what they had trained to do, but it still felt strange. 600,000 enemies dead or wounded, and he felt no triumph, only a quiet relief that it was over. A young officer approached their position under a flag of truce, recognized him, the same one they had captured and released on the first day. The medics had said his name was. I came to ask a question, said. His voice was steadier than before, but his eyes still carried the haunted look of someone whose world had been broken. Ask, Harrison said. Why did you release me? I was an enemy officer. I had information about our forces. Why let me go? Because you were no longer a threat, answered, and because treating prisoners humanely is part of what we are, part of what you are. Shook his head slowly. I have tried to explain this to my commanders. They do not understand. They cannot understand. In the Dominion, prisoners are resources to be exploited or eliminated. Mercy is weakness. And how has that philosophy worked out for the Dominion this week? Flinched. You have made your point, but I still do not understand how you fought so effectively with so few. Considered the question. He had heard it many times over the years from many different species. The answer was always difficult to explain because it required understanding concepts that most galactic civilizations had never developed. How many soldiers were in your unit when the fighting started? He asked. 100. Under my direct command. And when your communications were jammed and your superior officers killed, what happened? We stopped. We waited for orders. Why? Because that is what soldiers do. We follow orders, and if no orders come, hesitated, then we wait until orders come. Nodded. There is your answer. When your chain of command broke, your soldiers stopped functioning. When our chain of command breaks, every soldier becomes their own commander. every fire. Team operates independently toward the mission objective. We do not wait for orders. We have already been given the authority to act, but how do you coordinate? How do you prevent chaos? Training. Years and years of training. Not just in weapons and tactics, but in judgment, decision-making, ethics. We do not train soldiers to follow orders. We train them to understand the mission and achieve it using their own judgment. When communications fail, the mission continues because every soldier already knows what needs to be done. Stared at him for a long moment. This is why you call it a professional army, not because you pay them, because you train them to be professionals, experts, independent agents who can function without supervision. Now you understand. I understand nothing, voice cracked. Everything I was taught about warfare is wrong. How am I supposed to return to the Dominion knowing this? Harrison stepped forward. That is a question you will have to answer for yourself. But consider this. The Dominion breeds soldiers by the billion and treats them as disposable tools. We train soldiers for years and treat them as valued professionals. Which approach produces better results? Which approach respects the dignity of the people who serve? Had no answer. He bowed stiffly, turned, and walked back toward the evacuation ships. He would carry this conversation with him for the rest of his life. Perhaps it would change nothing. Perhaps the Dominion would continue breeding conscripts and losing them by the millions to professional armies across the galaxy, or perhaps someday a young officer named would rise high enough to change how his people thought about war. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council reconvened for a final vote. The great chamber was quiet as Ambassador took the central platform. Earth does not seek territory from the Dominion, she announced. We do not demand reparations or punishment. We ask only that our 3 colony worlds be recognized as human territory under full council protection, and that humanity be granted complete membership in this body. That seems remarkably generous, the delegate said. His skin was pale blue now, the color of respect. By galactic tradition, you could demand much more. We could. We choose not to. That is the point. The chair called for a vote. 12 delegates raised their appendages in favor. None opposed. For the first time in history, the council voted unanimously on a membership question. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador, the chair said. May your species contribute to the peace and prosperity of all civilized worlds. Bode, that has always been our intention. 6 months later, Sergeant Major James stood in front of a classroom in Portland, Oregon. 28 students looked up at him with varying degrees of attention and boredom. He wore a simple suit and tie, no military insignia, nothing to mark him as anything other than a high school history teacher. Who can tell me, he said, what caused the fall of the Roman Empire? A girl in the front row raised her hand. Barbarian invasions. That is the simple answer. But why did the barbarians succeed? Rome had armies. Rome had technology. Rome had wealth. Why did they lose? The students looked at each other uncertainly. They lost, said, because they forgot what made their army great. In the early days, Roman soldiers were citizens who served because they believed in something larger than themselves. By the end, they were mercenaries who fought only for pay. They lost the professional spirit that made them effective, and so They fell to enemies who were less numerous but more committed. He paused, looking out at the young faces before him. Remember this lesson. Numbers are not strength, weapons are. Not power, what makes an army a nation. A civilization strong is the quality of its people and their commitment to something beyond themselves. Train your mind, develop your judgment, serve others. That is what true professionals do, whether they carry weapons or not. The bell rang. Students gathered their things and filed out. None of them knew that their teacher had fought on 12 worlds. None of them knew about Nu or the 4,000 soldiers who had changed galactic history. They just knew him as Mr. the history teacher who made them work hard and told them everyone had potential for greatness. And perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. The professional soldier was not defined by their ability to kill. They were defined by their commitment to protect, their capacity for restraint, their dedication to something larger than themselves. Humanity had built the most effective military force in the galaxy. They had used it to defend, not conquer. They had shown mercy when destruction was possible. And now their soldiers came home to teach and farm and build and raise families. The galaxy finally understood what a human professional army truly was. It was not a weapon, it was a promise. Promise that humanity would protect what mattered, defend those who could not defend themselves, and never use their strength for conquest or cruelty. That was what the council had learned on Nu. That was what would carry with him forever. That was what Mr. taught his students every day without ever saying a word about it. True strength was not the ability to destroy. True strength was the choice not